Today on Tuff Trax, we review the first half of 1990 on the TNT Monster Truck Challenge. The big story early was the introduction of the controversial Bigfoot 8. Also, we'll look back at 3 trucks racing side by side for the first time ever. There were so many stories we covered during the year on Tuff Trax in 1990, but the preeminent story was Bob Chandler's Bigfoot number 8 winning the World Championship after coming up a half point short of the world title in 1988. He took off 1989 to build this brand new state-of-the-art Bigfoot number 8. And then after the truck was temporarily banned by TNT, it came from behind in points to win the World Championship for the Ford camp. Hi again, everyone. I'm Scott Douglas, and on the day Foot won the title, I talked with Bob Chandler. TNT crowned its 3rd world champion in 1990, and the guy who started it all is at the top of the TNT World Championship standings, Bob Chandler, and the Bigfoot operation. And first of all, the obvious starting point is with a congratulations. You have to be very proud of your operation and your team for winning this championship. You were so close 2 years ago. Now you got the big trophy.
Yeah, I'm really happy with it, and a lot of it's got to do with Andy, the driver, and a lot of it with the new type of truck that I brought in, and I'm really glad he let me finish the series.
You know, it's a situation earlier on where you certainly had to be considered a long shot to win it, especially not only did you get a late start, then they completely banned your new truck for a couple of months. Think back to that. I know you didn't take it very well.
No, I really didn't. I had a big argument with TNT because of that. In fact, there were going to be a court battle, but we ended up making a gentleman's agreement. We let the truck out for, I think, 10 races is what it came up to. We brought Bigfoot 4 in, a 7-year-old truck, and young driver John Pyatt. And why we filled in, I guess they put it so everybody else could get caught up, basically. The truck was new. There's a lot of new things about it. And to me, it was a much better truck. It's better for the drivers and the crowd.
Was it fair to penalize you, though, just because the other trucks didn't have your operation?
No, I really don't think so. I don't agree with it at all. I think we should have run all year. If TNT, as far as I'm concerned, if TNT would have let all the other drivers know that this suspension was legal at the beginning of the year, by mid-season there have been trucks like you have here now. There's a lot of trucks right now with that type of suspension, and they're better trucks. It's a better race.
What makes it a better truck, Bob? What's better for the driver? I know Andy says the same thing. It's a better truck.
Well, the main thing is the truck sticks to the ground. When they go flying over these cars, when it goes down, it stays on the ground. The driver is in control longer. The truck is controllable when it's on the ground. When it's bouncing, the driver can't do anything but hang on. So as long as you keep it on the ground, it's not only controllable, but it's drivable. So the guy makes better time. That's why it wins, I think, because it sticks to the ground like that. It's easier on the driver. The driver doesn't bounce all over and get hurt. It's something that we have to do. This type of racing, we're going faster and faster all the time, needs this type of a vehicle just for safety.
When we think about the ban, you were dominating the indoor circuit, and I guess that's kind of what led to it from TNT's part. When you brought this truck out in the winter months, you guys were hard to beat. It was an awesome display indoors.
Oh, I agree. I think the truck's good either place, indoors or out. I had some arguments with some of the other guys. They said, well, once you go outside, we're going to blow your doors away, which didn't really happen. But I think the truck will work on almost any type of track now. I really think it's a truck of the future. It's a Stage 3 monster truck.
You had guys, obviously there's been a lot of controversy over it, but a guy like Scott Stevens has said a lot about the truck. Everett Jasmer's had a lot of opinions to be made. Do you have a problem with these guys? Or, I mean, how do you feel about those guys who basically tried to get your truck outlawed?
Well, they've got their own, they're right. You know, they've got their truck, and I suppose if I was in their shoes, I would have probably fought it too somewhat. But you've got to sit back and look at the sport in general. It's better for the sport I think, with what I did. So I might have argued a while if I was in their shoes, but I darn sure would have not have banned the truck.
You decided to go ahead and make an agreement with TNT and run a obviously lesser racing vehicle over those couple of months. And I guess when this championship and when they're going to hand out the awards at the banquet, pat everybody on the back, everybody's going to be talking about Andy Brass. But John Pyatt has a big piece of that trophy, doesn't he?
He did a good job. For a young guy, John was a bicycle racer years ago when he was a kid, and he was been all over the world. I watched him at a race in, I think it was Indianapolis, where I had an indoor camera on him. and he made it natural to me. Just watching his movements in the vehicle, I thought he was a natural. So that's why we put him in there instead of one of my more experienced drivers, and he did an excellent job.
Heard somebody tell me once that they thought monster trucks basically were still exhibitions, and the drivers, and to an extent, there was still a lot of exhibition in them until they saw Andy Brass on the figure-8 course in Louisville, Kentucky, and they said, this has become a racing sport. He was awesome that day.
He really was. He took an old truck, like we were saying earlier, Bigfoot 4, that's 7 years old, and tell you what, he made a believer of me. There's a lot of guys says, well, you're chicken to run your old trucks against us. You know, you're afraid we'll beat you. Well, Andy come out and he blew their doors away. I mean, it was amazing. And we had a problem because it was an alcohol motor in there and it was too big for the class. So to get it in Louisville, we had to change go to gasoline on it. And if you watch the tape, it did not run right, but Andy gave it 110%. He's an excellent driver.
Do you try to make any modifications on Andy's driving, or do you just let him go and hope the report is that he didn't turn it over on you?
Well, every Tuesday at our shop, we view tapes. And we go over and we criticize each other. We see what we did good, what we did bad, what somebody else did that's better or worse. And we all learn from each other's mistakes. To me, Andy makes very, very few mistakes. He's quick. He's conscientious. He'll spend time before the race. He checks the course out. He looks at his notes from previous races. He knows his gear ratios. There's a lot involved in there. And to me, he's more involved than any other driver here. He's a sportsman. I mean, he's a true racer.
Is there more pressure on your guys because they're wearing the blue and having Bigfoot on there, and they know so many people come to see him, and they've really carried the banner for Ford for so long?
I'm sure there is. When I was driving years ago, it bothered me a lot before you're going out in front of the crowd and you're there as one of the features. You don't want it to break. Well, what bothers me is before the race, you're sitting there and you start worrying about, did I check this, did I check this? You know, you want to make sure it's going to be right. I'm sure the drivers there, everybody's out to beat Bigfoot. You know, I've been around a long time, and we're on top for a long time, and people want to knock you down. So they try hard. They do a good job. My drivers and crew are all excellent.
The truck that took you to the championship is Bigfoot 8. Now, we are aware there is a Bigfoot 9 out there as well. Is there a 10 and 11? Where does it go from here?
We built the frame for a number 10, but I think I'm going to hold it because I'm not sure where the sport is going right now. TNT has been bought out, and we need to sit back and wait and see what's going to happen. I just hope they don't lose this series. It's a dynamite series.
And you want to be involved in racing, not just bringing these things out for exhibitions?
Definitely. Racing is the way to go. I love it.
You started out going for the TNT Points Championship in 1988. I know you were very unhappy you came that close. You decided not to run next year for the points the next year. You stayed back. Some people criticized you, but you stayed in, you built your new truck, and you came out and you covered them, and you got the championship.
Yeah, and I thank everybody for coming and watching us and for cheering us on, and if there's any racing next year, I'm going to be back doing it.
They've got the World Championship Trophy, the Bigfoot Camp, headed by this man, Bob Chandler. This week's review of 1990 on Tuff Trax is brought to you by the Nintendo Entertainment System. Nintendo, now you're playing with power. Welcome back to Tuff Trax. Scott Douglas with Army Armstrong and Chris Chapman. Army, we talked about Bigfoot 8. We got to see him against the Gravedigger Memphis in January.
Yeah, when he rolled into Memphis, the city of the blues, believe me, the big blue truck was ready to do battle. And battle he did, Scott.
He jumped right out in the Mid-South Coliseum and quickly showed everybody what these other monster truck drivers were afraid of, that this indeed was a new era in monster truck racing.
During the interview with Bob Chandler, he talked about the truck sticking to the track. Right here, you can see what happens. When you're bouncing in the air, it doesn't work. When it sticks, it goes straight.
Army Armstrong was able to talk with Andy Brass about those initial runs.
Ladies and gentlemen, when you're on top, there's only one place to go, buddy, and everybody's trying to knock you down this thing any way they can. Anderson gave you a handful right there.
That's right. Dennis did give a good run. But the Ford Bigfoot, you know, we've been after the Chevy Digger for a long time and finally come around to where we got him.
Well, the vehicle seemed to go decently well for you, but Anderson had his hands full. He was all over the place. Are you aware of him being in trouble on a run like that, or are you too busy just driving your truck?
Well, I kind of caught Dennis in the side mirror there once, and I seen him coming over. I knew he was going to hit the hill hard. Dennis's truck, he's known to be squirrely, so figuring he'd hit the hill hard, he's going to be out of control a little bit. We just tried to run a straight race. I seen him, and so I tried to hang off to my left side a little bit to keep him hitting me.
It was an exciting run there, of course, for that truck, the Bigfoot truck with Digger right behind him. Now we see the Auto Value King punch against Buffalo Tremor, and Scott Stevens has some problems.
Well, the front suspension collapsed on the truck when he landed right at the finish line. He was all right, but immediately he and his crew chief knew they were going to have back to the drawing board if they were going to be able to run with the other blue truck, the Bigfoot truck of Brad.
Scott Stevens with not much left in terms of body on that truck. After this run, you'll get a look at it from the end zone, if you will, and King Crunch literally falls apart.
What happened again, we're going to refer back to the interview you had with Bob Chandler at the beginning of the show. The suspension was too tight, okay? Nothing would absorb the energy of the impact. That's what broke the truck. That's not the case on the Bigfoot truck. It's soft, it's smooth, it's almost like landing a sponge.
Moving to Roanoke, Virginia, Gravedigger head-to-head with Equalizer.
Gravedigger in his own backyard will love nothing better to do a good job in his state of Virginia, but the picture tells it all, Scott.
It certainly does, and what it tells you is that David Morris had just about enough time in this truck. This wreck and what we'll see coming up later in Virginia told David Morris it was time for him to do something else.
Well, Morris recently married. He and his wife are expecting, and he just had a chance after this event to kind of back up and say, is this what I want to do for a living? This is a real racing sport. Danger is a factor in monster truck racing for the World Championship. This is proof right here. It's not shows. It's not grins and giggles. It's real racing.
Again, we'll look at it from the end zone and watch Digger veer way off course at the end and come smacking right in to the defending world champion truck and the world championship driver, David Morris, in the Equalizer.
You know, Morris basically had a real good run going. He was just the victim of circumstances. He's all right, but wrong place at the wrong time in Virginia.
Same city, Roanoke, Virginia, would actually be his last run in this truck. This is it.
Now, like getting bucked on the horse, you got to get back on. Well, he did, but the horse broke down. This time, the front suspension completely gave away. Morris, you can almost see it, Scott. There was something missing from his eyes. He did not have the killer instinct anymore when he got out of the truck. That was the last time he would do that.
And he certainly acted like he had lost confidence in his equipment. Did his owner lose confidence in him? And they have been part of it, too. Army talked with Gary Cook about the problem.
I understand there's been a major change in the driver's department. Gary Cook, explain what's going on with the Equalizer team.
Well, the driver, I reckon, was unhappy because we broke 2 nights in a row. And I don't know, he went home. So Mike Wine broke his truck, so he's going to just qualify the truck today. The truck's damaged too bad to race anyhow, but we're just trying to get it, stay in the point race and try to get it down the track. But it's many parts broke, it's going to be rough.
I don't want to touch on something real touchy here on you, but a lot of people around the country have been following you and David Morris. You're a good team together. Are you telling me this team may have broken up today in Roanoke?
I don't know. He didn't say a word before he left.
It did break up right there in Roanoke. David Morris would not drive for Gary Cook again. Morris, however, would come back later in the year and try to get a little bit back in the sport. We may see him down the road in the future. But Gary Cook went back to the drawing board. In the meantime, the action continued, and Steve Wilkie got an education right here in USA 1. That education, Army, do not touch the brake.
Well, the big trick in monster truck racing, when you're in trouble, you got to throttle up, you got to mash the motor, you got to go full boogaloo. Do not touch the brake. When you do, this is what happens. Wilkie was okay, but once again, USA 1 winds up on its lid.
You know, Steve Wilkie did learn a lesson in this run. He stayed off the brake the rest of the year, but that didn't mean he stayed off his roof. It was a wild year for USA 1, as we'll continue to document as this review program goes on.
Yo, again, the interview you had with Chandler, he made some, I think, great statements. This is real racing. I mean, these guys, every time they go to the line, it's like a war. USA 1 does not want to be beat. That's not what it's about. Wilkie and the crew, you know, you can just feel it. They want to prove they can run with the best of them. The problem is the truck keeps breaking on them.
There's Steve Wilkie, and a good look at him. He is such an intense individual anyway. Boy, was he pumped after this rollover.
For the spectator at home, watch the wheel. See if you see him stop. I don't think he tagged the brake as hard as he thought he did, Scott. I think he did exactly what he was supposed to do. Gravity just took that truck over. That's just my opinion. But I think Wilkie did the right thing in that rollover.
No question, though, in his mind, he felt like he caused it by hitting the brake, Army, and I think that affected his driving the rest of the year.
It did. It was in the back of his mind. As a matter of fact, Everett Jasper has the brake lights hooked up on that truck, and as it rolled over right there, I did not see the brake light on. That driver did exactly what he had to do. It just was time for the truck to go, and look at this. Wow.
Boy, the damage done, but USA 1 would be rebuilt and back on the circuit as the year continued. This was only the beginning of a dizzying 1990 for Steve Wilkie and USA 1. Tuff Trax continuing to review the excitement of 1990 on the TNT Monster Truck Challenge. And nowhere was that excitement more evident than in a sold-out Tingley Coliseum as rabid fans turned out to cheer on the superstars of monster truck racing in Albuquerque, New Mexico. They also got to see the debut of the new driver in the Equalizer. Army Armstrong was on top of the story when Gary Cook showed up with a new chauffeur.
Well, thanks, God. We're standing with the big story of 1990, that being the Equalizer truck, your defending national champion, and the fact he's making a driver's change. Gary Cook being very blunt about it. What happened to David Morris?
He decided to quit for a while and stay home with his wife. She was pregnant, and well, they're deal about now, so he was going to stay home with her.
Okay, now you drove the truck after he left it. He left it on a Sunday morning. You just went to a race. You had to take over the driving chores. You've done a good job driving a truck. You're not interested in driving a truck is the word that I get. You've hired another young guy to do the driving. Tell me about your new driver.
Greg Holbrook has come from a quad racing background, and he's new and inexperienced, but I believe he can run with the best with just a little experience.
You do think that this kid's going to be a player for you, can drive this truck, could possibly defend this national champion for you?
Yes, I think so. I drove the truck myself, and I did pretty good with no more experience than I've had, so I feel like with his younger reflexes, he can do even better than I can in the truck.
The initial race for Greg Holbrook as the pilot of the World Championship equipment came against Wild Hair. This is the first race for Holbrook in Albuquerque.
Everybody wondered if this youngster could do it. Like we say, he came from a quad racing background, little bitty four-wheel quad racer, step up to the monster truck, but real quick, he was there to show him the kid from Lebanon, Tennessee is for real. Holbrook will be a player before the year's over.
He definitely showed that he was ready to come out, hit it hard, and had no fear about going up against the big names in the sport when he ran Marvin Smith and beat him in his initial shot. Then Army got to talk with Greg Holbrook after that run.
Greg Holbrook, I don't believe there's anything in this sport such as beginner's luck. Either have it or you don't. And I believe you're proving right now, son, you definitely have the ability to drive one of these monster trucks.
I'm just getting better with every round, learning from every trip. It's just, truck's working real well. Gary's got it set up good. It's just, all you got to do is just get in there and drive.
You're getting a lot of confidence, aren't you? You're getting a lot of confidence in your interviews and in driving the truck. You just keep up the good work. We're going to be keeping an eye on you. Good luck in that next round.
Okay, thank you,
When Bigfoot 8 came out initially, the Equalizer folks and some others thought that truck could be had. And indeed, Equalizer held its own with Bigfoot 8 the first few times around. But as the winter indoor season went on into the spring, Bigfoot 8's dominance continued. And Army, here in Albuquerque, it became clear that you can't touch this in terms of Bigfoot 8. He was dominating.
Bigfoot has always been a blue truck. It came out with the yellow and red stripe at Albuquerque and dominated the sport, and it will be a while now before they saw the yellow and red stripe again. They would not let the new engineered truck run.
It was here in Albuquerque in late March, Army, that I think the real movement to ban Bigfoot 8 got started. There had been a lot of grumbling, but here it became a groundswell, led most notably by Scott Stevens of the King Crunch Camp and some within the administration of TNT. The next event after this Albuquerque showdown would be inside at Dallas, and the Bigfoot truck had lost its stripes.
The yellow and the red were gone down the side. A new rookie driver takes the wheel of a 7-year-old truck, and he is still a player. The truck had some electrical problems, but John Payant, who could be the driver of the future, followed Bob Chandler's advice and kept in the points race for 1993. Side by side, Scott.
This was the first time it ever happened. It came in Dallas, Texas. Bigfoot 8 was not there. Bigfoot 4 had to try and take up the cause, but Master of Disaster was making the headlines after almost going over on his roof. Doug Spanier out of Albany, Minnesota, really gave people a scare in Dallas, Texas.
In Texas Stadium, Spanier was really riding them Cowboys. He held the truck straight on that particular run. Two trucks were actually in trouble. To his left, we had a truck trying to stay away from the ball. There's only one entrance and exit way into this huge stadium. These guys were scared. You got three big boys, and they're all trying to do the same thing if they're in trouble. Watch the replay come up on the screen. Spanier takes a real weird bounce right here. It'll throw him up. He's flying the truck from here on out. Meanwhile, off to the right of the screen, The kid from New York has got his hands full trying to stay away from the wall.
And again, trying to get it settled down. Spanier stops it just in time.
Doug Spanier, the further you go into this battle, the tougher these fights get.
Boy, I tell you, the first 2 runs I only went to second gear, and I went to third gear that run, and it hooked up. It just shot it. I probably should have caught third a little bit quicker, but I caught it about the time I was going up the ramp, and I think I just launched it that much more.
Are you ready for the next round? Everything go?
I think everything's good. One arm's bent a little bit to straighten that out.
We'll see you in the next round. These Texans are loving every minute of it.
Yeah, no doubt.
All right, today's Power Drive is brought to you by Nintendo, bringing cheers from the crowd at every turn. Whenever you feel the need to show what you're made of, reach for Nintendo. Now, you're playing with power. And on the Power Drive one more time, Doug Spanier says, hold on, in the Master of Disaster. There was not a nightclub in Dallas that had a rougher bucking Bronco ride than Spanier rode in Texas Stadium that day. We're coming right back. Welcome back to television's most powerful hour. Scott Douglas, Army Armstrong, and Chris Chapman reviewing 1990. When we went 3 wide in Texas Stadium, we knew it would be exciting, but it really got wild when Wild Hair smacked Clydesdale and put him on his roof.
Well, we said a moment ago there's only one exit in this building, and everybody was trying to get out. We had a throttle stick on this run. We had an engine malfunction. The only thing you can do is try to go into a safe area. You can't put 2 monster trucks in the same hole at the same time. That was proven in Dallas.
Again, we knew 3 at a time would be exciting, but even 2 at a time were still exciting in Dallas. Watch Bigfoot in USA 1.
Yeah, but when the 2 are Bigfoot in USA 1, Chevrolet and Ford, it's nothing but an old-style Texas shootout.
Steve Wilkie takes USA 1 in to the 30-second clock. I guess it's a 45-second clock now that the National Football League teams use. They look at that clock when the quarterbacks are making their play calls to make sure they get the playoff in time. Well, if that one malfunctions this year, it's probably because Wilkie nailed it. More action. Look at that. Clydesdale came back after being knocked on his roof and beat the Master of Disaster as Texas Stadium went nuts.
Well, 2 of the wildest runs in Texas history wind up going head-to-head in the next round. The Disaster, he worked his way out. Clydesdale worked his way out, and both drivers picked up a following of fans you wouldn't believe out of the Lone Star State.
It was an outstanding run. We'll watch it again on the replay. Almost a sunroof version for Clydesdale without that top sheet metal. Master of Disaster actually wheel standing and flying like never before. Clydesdale beats him here. Master had a great weekend, but this was certainly a high moment for Bennett Clark to be able to come back from the kind of adversity he had faced by getting knocked over from the Wild Hair. It was a big moment for him, and Army Armstrong talked to him after that winning run.
Bennett, it's been a long night in Texas. What's new, son?
Dude, it's a tough night out here.
The truck looks good. You got the confidence back. They say you always got to get back up on that rascal and ride it. You're an old bull rider. That's exactly what you're doing.
Yeah, I like to ride. I like driving monster trucks. That's just like getting towed off full. You just get back on it and go again.
Now, Master of Disaster had won the first time out. On night number 2, though, he could not pull it off in the final as Greg Holbrook in the equalizer wins the Texas Cup here in Dallas and really does a great job stretching out his point lead over Bigfoot by picking up this win at Texas Stadium. This is a big moment for Greg Holbrook.
Yeah, big moment for this complete team because at this point, Gary Cook knew he was going to be in the chase for the World Championship.
Once again, this is the second night in Dallas. Master of Disaster made it back to the final, but didn't have what it took this time to knock off the equalizer in Greg Holbrook. An impressive run. They took the Texas Cup, and boy, really, Greg Holbrook started coming of age. Army talked with both Holbrook and Gary Cook after the win.
Greg Holbrook, what a Cinderella story. Go ahead and take your trophy. That's fantastic. Gary, congratulations to you. It looks like you've again picked you a super driver for this truck.
I had a lot of faith in him. I thought he could do it.
You know, you got to be the quietest young man in this sport, but you really carry a big stick. I'm awfully proud you're here with us. Congratulations on winning this first ever Texas event. Hang in there, son. You're going to be a star.
Thank you, Army. I just needed a little experience under me, and I knew I could do it.
Tell you what, you guys are definitely hot and heavy in this thing. We'll be watching it the rest of the year. Congratulations again.
Thank you, Army.
It looked bad at this point in late April for the Bigfoot camp. Equalizer was rolling. The new driver was dialed in. Bigfoot 8 was banned, and all the responsibility for that team was laid on Bigfoot 4. But Andy Brass drove that truck with a vengeance. We'll see those races when we return. Tuff Trax continues to review 1990. I'm Scott Douglas with Army Armstrong and Chris Chapman. The most unique and longest course in monster truck racing. The Figure 8 at Louisville Motor Speedway in June. Gravedigger head-to-head with Outlaw. Two of the most, shall I say, bubbling personalities in the sport. Dennis Anderson and Mike Wine head-to-head.
Well, they're running on the big bow tie in Louisville, Kentucky. They got to make right turns. They got to make left turns, and in between, they got to fly them as far as they can. And fly, they did at Louisville as Anderson, like he said, takes to the air in the blue dress.
But so many times in 1990, there it was again. Hearts flying from out of the Gravedigger, more breakage, and that was truly the story with the world's most popular monster truck in 1990. He had his moments, but he was broken so often.
Got to sum it up, when he didn't break, he won. Now, what does that tell you?
Tells me he needs to find a way to keep that truck together.
Exactly.
Here he is, Dennis Anderson, finishing this run, but it's a run with a broken truck, as we talked about. Mike Wine really had his troubles as well at Louisville. His problems came because of the length of the course and the fact that his truck got so hot and overheated so much. But again, Gravedigger broken and out at Louisville. It was a major disappointment for him and a major disappointment for his fans at Louisville Motor Speedway.
You know, a lot of things were happening in Louisville. We see the replay come up. You actually see the shrapnel coming off the vehicle like a bomb explosion. Those are safety straps. But Mike Wine at this point in time teamed up with the Super Winch people, and they became a player before the year was over with that Outlaw truck.
You know, Dennis Anderson and the Gravedigger is the scene that we saw so often in the pits, trying to repair the broken truck. And Dennis Anderson, certainly, as he looks to the future of the Gravedigger in the sport, knows he has to find a way to keep his act together. Chris Chapman talked to him about the problem.
Dennis Anderson, obviously, no front drive shafts. Can you tell us if there's any other problems?
Yeah, we broke a mid-plate that the transfer case bolts to. You know, in qualifying, the ramps were really kind of steep. And, got very much air, came down on one side, it crammed the shaft back into the case, and it broke the mid-plate on the transfer case and broke the front drive shaft out of it.
Do you believe it's the track?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's like, we're going to run fast, we kind of need some mellow ramps. We can still get air. That track right there, if I really would have hammered the truck, I would have skied it out and broke it in two, probably.
Are you going to be able to come back? That's the big question.
I don't think so. We broke the rear tie rod in, too, so we're out of it, as usual.
So Dennis Anderson, a lot of the teams complained about those ramps, but again, this was just an extension of what happened to Anderson all year, breaking.
Yeah, you know, I just made an observation with Chris Chapman. Monster truck drivers have their own language, don't they? And she understood what he was saying. I'm happy for her. I did not.
The Clydesdale woes continued in Louisville. Watch this. Bennett Clark, who was not having a bad year till he got to Dallas, must have thought that the bad black cloud followed him into Dallas and would not leave him, because after he put his truck back together, it disintegrates on him here at Louisville. I'll tell you who else followed him to Louisville. Cruncher did.
Cruncher here. This Cruncher of the Week ain't a pretty sight. Brought to you by Glue, makers of micro machines and Tuff Trax vehicles. Are you tough enough for Tuff Trax?
Bennett Clark had to be tough to ride this one out, as watch really just the axle and that back wheel shear off going across the car.
Yeah, the right rear suspension went away on him. The big story is he was able to hold it straight, pull it back together. We saw him later in the year, but he was not attacking the track later on like he did up till this point in Louisville, Scott.
The man in the black hat, Bennett Clark, with some tough times in the Clydesdale Chevrolet, making it this time around on the Crunch of the Week. This may be the singular greatest monster truck race one-on-one that has ever been held, Army. Carolina Crusher, Gary Porter, against Andy Brass, driving Bigfoot 4, figure 8 course at Louisville, Kentucky in the semifinal round. And do not think that Bigfoot is beat right now.
All the ingredients for drama are here. Chevrolet versus Ford. Brass in an old truck going against Gary Porter in a truck. Porter jumps way out. It's covered. But what happens? Just like in the movie, keep an eye on the background because the Bigfoot truck is coming after him right now.
I remember live watching this race thinking, wait a minute, he can't be coming back.
There's no way possible. People, at this point, people just started to hold their breath because could he beat it?
Yes, he could. At the finish line by inches as the entire crowd at Louisville Motor Speedway came to its feet. Andy Brass pulled off certainly the biggest come-from-behind win in the history of monster truck racing. You know, you think about this sport in terms of when a guy gets an advantage early, he generally wins the race.
Well, what happened at Louisville, the motor they were running, again, we go back to the opening show interview. Chandler said this motor was an alcohol motor, but they were running it on gas. The fuel mixture was wrong. It fell flat on his face on the starting line. But when the engine cleared out, Brass flew it home.
It was without question the greatest race of the year. Army Armstrong talked with both competitors after that run.
Ladies and gentlemen, you had to see, I believe, the best monster truck race ever. You just saw it. Between the Carolina Crusher Chevrolet and the Bigfoot Ford. Andy Brass, it bobbled on you right on the starting line. Have any idea what happened?
No, I don't. You know, we've been having problems with that right off the line. All night tonight it's been bobbling on us. We fixed it one run, and then this run it acted up again.
Well, by the crowd screaming, we just found out you're coming to the finals. You took the win. Gary, does that surprise you?
It was a very close race. I knew I was going to push the truck really hard, and they're running against Andy, and right there at the end, I thought he did get me.
Welcome back to Tuff Trax, reviewing the great moments of 1990 on the TNT Monster Truck Challenge. Again, Louisville Motor Speedway, Louisville, Kentucky. This is the second day of competition for the TNT Monster Trucks on the figure 8 course. Army, when Andy Vertrees and all the people at TNT got together, Vertrees being the promoter at LMS, to run an event on the figure 8 course, it sounded like a neat idea and a neat show. But for these monster truck racers, it posed huge problems they had never run before and a lot of different situations that they had never run into before. Well, for Gary Porter and the Carolina Crusher, once he made that left turn after a right turn, he found himself making a skyward turn.
Yeah, Skywalker in the bluegrass, but Porter very wisely back on the front. The micro machine went on for a win. That was the ride that Gary Porter was talking about for the rest of the year.
Micro Machine, this is one of his first races out of the chute with a new truck on the TNT Monster Truck Challenge built by the Breen Stable out of Missouri. Gary Porter and the Carolina Crusher had to say, wait a minute, did I do any damage? And really, he didn't do much damage smacking the wall. It had to be, though, a scary moment for Gary at this point. Looking skyward, he didn't know where the stands of the fence of the wall were.
Normally we say you got to throttle when you're in trouble. What do you do in this case? Because like you say, he was up, and away.
You know, it's funny when you talk to him after that race, Porter said he really felt like he could have continued to ride that wheelie out, but he didn't know where he was, so he just powered it to make the front end come back down.
You know, this highlight show we're doing today, it shows the people how much these guys go. I mean, this is tough. This is rough. You're not going to get a Saturday night race anywhere that is more intense than Porter trying to make that turn at Louisville. He did everything he possibly could. It was just not to be on this Sunday afternoon. But look what did happen on this Sunday afternoon.
It became an all-four championship Monster Smash final. Outlaw with a big advantage over Bigfoot's Andy Brass. But as we saw a little earlier, this was nothing in terms of deficit. Brass knew he had overcome a bigger one before that. Yet there would be another factor playing into this. Mike Wines claimed that there was a malfunction in his killer radio box. His truck goes dead and Brass puts him away.
At this point in time, the truck is stuttering. It's cut down. He doesn't know what it is. You see the smoke coming out. That's a sign the electrical system is going off and on. Andy Brass takes the win, and Mike Wines is mad.
Andy Brass is excited, thrilled on cloud 9. His fans are going bananas as after just barely losing in the finals the night before, he comes back to win it all the second day at Louisville. But as you pointed out, Army, Mike Wine was mad as a hornet. He says the killer radio box cost him this win.
You know, it can very easily be the case. These trucks take such an abuse when they land like that. But the ironic thing here is notice Bigfoot is always coming from behind. But when he lands, he's for real.
A few moments ago, we showed you an Andy Brass run that certainly had no fear involved, even though there were a lot of reasons to have fear. High speed, tight turns at Louisville Motor Speedway. Well, here at Richmond, Army, another course where there was reason for fear.
The fear here is a result of the pit road wall. Now, normally these walls are for safety, but for monster trucks, they can be the kiss of death. That's exactly what happened. The walls were intimidating the driver. It was like riding a rocket ship down a bowling alley. A little bit left, a little bit right. You're in bad trouble, as Gary Porter proves right here in the replay.
The course proved to be very rough, and Gary Porter, trying to make the proper adjustments, apparently made improper adjustments because the wheels came off the rims on this run. And really, let's watch it from this angle, and when you see this, Army, it's amazing that he didn't go completely over on his roof.
Yeah, what it is, you're dealing with up, down, left, and right, and also pitch and yaw. That's exactly what the terminology is in aviation, because he was flying the Carolina Crusher.
You can see the damage there, but really it was just tires without air that had been knocked off the rims, and it could have been much worse for Gary Porter's Carolina Crusher. Chris Chapman was on the scene at Richmond, Virginia, and talked to Gary after that wild ride.
Gary, pretty rough ride for qualifying. Is everything all right?
I think it will be. I went out and looked the course over before qualifying, and I adjusted the tire pressure where I thought it, should have been, and I guess my guess was wrong. I dropped my air pressure a little bit, so I'm going to have to put some more in it, so maybe I won't knock the tires off the rims again.
Did it just take those two tires? Is that the only problems you had?
Yes, I don't think it busted them. It just knocked them off the rim, broke the bead loose and bent a few shocks, and I think that's it.
We'll let you get back to work.
Okay, thank you.
When we got to Richmond, Virginia, the regular Bigfoot 4 driver, John Pyatt, was back behind the wheel. And Andy Brass said, go get him. Go get him, meaning the main nemesis for Bigfoot this year, Auto Value King Crunch driver Scott Stevens in that vehicle.
Well, you can see on the right, Stevens is a walking wounded. When they rolled into Richmond, the front end torn off. Pyatt trying to put a notch in his belt. He's trying to put the Chevrolet away. He doesn't.
Indeed, he gets the victory.
But the wall got Stevens.
And certainly the Auto Value King Crunch was the worst for wear after that run. Bigfoot in the Bigfoot camp, John Pyatt, Andy Brass, Bob Chandler, none of them wanted to see anything bad happen to Scott Stevens. But what they really wanted was to beat him head-to-head with the older truck, because that was so much of the controversy generated when Scott Stevens and so many of the others campaigned against Bigfoot 8 before the ban.
Again, Scott, if you watch the replay come up, the bounce is where the kiss of death comes from. You bounce good, you go straight. You bounce bad, uh-oh.
This is an awesome angle to watch this replay from. Just watch what happens to Scott Stevens and the Auto Value King Crunch at the end of the run. You can see how he got thrown off course and into the wall. Really, it could have been worse for Scott Stevens. Army Armstrong talked to the victorious John Pyatt of Bigfoot 4 after that run.
On a run like that, John, what do you do? Did you have any idea he was in trouble?
No, I didn't. I was concentrating on keeping my truck in a straight line. I really didn't even know where he was at.
Well, this proved to be one of the few bright moments for Gravedigger in 1990. The Monster Smash final, he beats the equalizer.
And if there was ever a partial crowd for the Gravedigger, it was right here. Listen to this. Hometown boy doing good, Scott.
And Army, he beat him in typical Dennis Anderson Gravedigger style, all out, full tilt, wild on the edge ride.
Flying it through there and sliding it on the end. That's Dennis Anderson.
Watch it again. You'll see he took no prisoners, and certainly when he goes up this second set of cars, up that ramp, he has no concern about how he's going to stop. That didn't cross his mind because he barely gets it in control at the end.
Now, he literally flies over the finish line. Now is when the driver gets involved, and he kept it upright, and the people literally went nuts. He ought to run for governor. I bet that guy can get it.
Dennis Anderson, as we've documented, had a rough 1990. There were very few moments like this, but I know he has to remember this is a very sweet one in front of a lot of fans, a lot of friends, and in front of the rest of the monster truck community. He took a huge victory in Richmond, Virginia, and then talked with
Well, you talk about a Cinderella story. It took place in Richmond, Virginia tonight. Dennis Anderson, bad luck. Maybe it's over, but when you turn around to good luck, wow, you couldn't have handpicked a better place.
Yeah, you know, Army, I've had pretty good luck the last 2 years out here, and I just try to keep my cool here. You know, I got a lot of mudbog fans, the guys that's known me from mudbogging years ago, and my hometown, mom, dad, my wife and kids, everybody in the stands, and they really want me to win, you know, and I want to win too. But, you know, we pulled it off and made it to the finals, and I really couldn't do it without Crowler cams, TCI torque converters, Creative Glass for fiberglass body parts, and M30 hand cleaner.
You know, it's really amazing. It takes a lot of people to make these teams work, and believe me, a bunch of people are on your team tonight. Congratulations, Dennis. A well-deserved win.
All right, thanks a lot, Army.
Twitter Carter.
You at Richmond, Virginia proved to be the USA 1 story. Equalizer would go head-to-head with USA 1, and before the race, Army reminisced with Greg Holbrook about a flip at this track for David Morris.
Greg, last year the Equalizer flipped to Richmond, Virginia. A different driver. You were not in the truck at that time, but does the fact that it flipped here affect you mentally before you get into the truck?
No, I mean, that's another driver, and this is another year, and you can't think about things like that. Just you got to block the wall out and start the flipping.
This is the one in '89 where David Morris flipped the Equalizer truck. You'll notice the different paint scheme, of course, midway through 1990. I guess about a third of the way, really. They changed to this paint scheme, the blue and white kind of hot modern paint style for the Equalizer truck. Now, what's interesting here is that this was kind of maybe an irony, a preview, because USA 1 racing against Equalizer is the one with the problem this time. Over he goes again.
Same players, different lanes, different result. What this tells you is you're going to race at Richmond, stay out of the right lane.
USA 1 goes on its roof again, and Army, this, unlike several other flips for USA 1, there was certainly no worry about touching the brake here. This just completely ripped the wheels and the front suspension out.
The trucks are yawing to the left. Both trucks at this point are actually going to the left. The problem is when USA 1 lands, the front end gets caught into the stack cars on the left lane. That's what pulls the front end out. It just literally ripped it out. Wilkie, we get the word is okay, but this was a tight moment.
Steve Wilkie's USA 1, a truck that continues to go on its roof, does it again at Richmond, Virginia. We'll get a great look here, Army.
Watch both trucks in the air. They both go in the same direction. Wilkie a little bit more.
But here you see the problem. The wheels had nowhere to go. They were stuck in between the cars and just got ripped out.
There's not a thing in the world Steve Wilkie can do here. You know, we've seen him go over twice during this show, and both times I do not believe it was his fault.
The USA 1 truck undergoes another rough day at the office, and the guys at the shop just kind of shake their heads and say, well, we're going to have to build her back again. Now, Bigfoot and Equalizer would go head-to-head at Richmond, Virginia. You know it was critical in the World Championship point standing as Bigfoot 4 tried to hang in there with the Equalizer.
Well, this gets down to the old Battle of the Blues, brothers. Two rookie drivers, one in a Chevrolet, one in a Ford, Scott. Everybody in the grandstand was on their feet for this one.
You know, an Equalizer is going to come on and make another outstanding run, but I think the point of this race right here is that John Pyatt and Bigfoot 4 kept the dream alive for Bob Chandler and for Andy Brass. And when they came back with the Bigfoot 8 truck in late July, Bigfoot was still very much a player for the world title, and Andy Brass was able to go win it. He could not have won the world title without John Pyatt keeping him alive during these months of the suspension of the Bigfoot 8 truck.
I couldn't agree with you anymore. John Pyatt did exactly what he had to do. He stayed close to the Equalizer. Then when Brass came back, they shut the door on him.
However, at this point, Equalizer, Gary Cook, his driver Greg Holbrook, they were riding cloud 9. They left Richmond victorious and building on their point lead over the Bigfoot camp. Next week, we're going to look at the second half of the season on the TNT Monster Truck Challenge, and the second half of the season meant the return of Bigfoot 8 and a march to the World Championship that had a lot of ups and downs, but in the end was successful for the Bob Chandler stable and Andy Brass driving Bigfoot. For Chris Chapman and Army Armstrong, I'm Scott Douglas. We'll look for you next week here on Tuff Trax. Tuff Trax has been brought to you by the Nintendo Entertainment System. Nintendo, now you're playing with power.